Morning students, myself Rajni Sharma. Today I am going to discuss with you the next topic of French Revolution. Earlier in the previous lecture we discussed about the outbreak of the French Revolution and how the France became constitutional monarchy. Now our next topic is France abolishes monarchy and becomes a republic. Louis XVI had signed the constitution, but he entered into secret negotiations with the King of Persia. Rulers of other neighboring countries too were worried by the developments in France and made plans to send troops to stop the revolutionary events taking place. In this, Louis XVI signed a secret treaty with King of Persia, which was actually against the spirit of the constitutional monarchy. And the ruler of the other neighboring countries, they were also worried about the developments, about the system, about what's going on in the France during that time. That's why they wanted to give their support to Louis XVI. Before this could happen, the National Assembly voted in April 1792 to declare war against Persia and Austria. As we discussed earlier, that the National Assembly formed by the Third Estate, and now they were against Persia and Austria. Thousands of volunteers joined the army from the provinces to join the army. People saw this war as a war of the people against kings and aristocracies all over Europe. Among the patriotic songs they sang was the Marseillaise, composed by the poet Roget d'Isle, and it was sung for the first time by volunteers from Marseille as they marched into Paris and so got its name. Now the Marseillaise is now the national anthem of France. The Revolutionary Wars brought losses and economic difficulties to the people. The Constitution of 1791 gave political rights only to the richer section of society. And that's why most of the people among the Third Estates, they were not happy with this right to vote in this political system. That's why various political clubs were established by the people who wished to discuss government policies and plan their own forms of action. And among all these political clubs, the most successful of these clubs was that of the Jacobins Club. The members of the Jacobin Club belonged mainly to the less prosperous section of society, and their leader was Maximilien Robespierre, very important personality in this French Revolution. Jacobins start wearing long striped trousers and came to be known as sans cloutons, literally meaning those without knee breeches. Actually, in this, the less prosperous society, people among the Third Estates, earlier they were not allowed to wear long striped trousers. And now, after these revolutionary actions taken by them, now they wore these long striped trousers and they named themselves as sans cloutons. It means the people without knee breeches. In the summer of 1792, Jacobins planned a revolt of a large number of the people of Paris who were angered by the short supplies and high prices of food. First 10, they stormed the palace of the Tuileries, massacred the king's guards, and held the king as a hostage. Fresh elections were held. From now, all men of 21 years and above, regardless of wealth, got the right to vote. The newly elected assembly was called the Convention. On 21st September 1792, the assembly abolished the monarchy and declared France a republic. Louis XVI was sentenced to death by a court on the charge of treason. On 21st January 1793, Louis XVI was executed. Now, with this, France became a republic. Next topic is Women Revolution. From the very beginning, women were active participants in the events which brought about so many changes in the French society. Most women of the Third Estate had to work for a living. Their wages were lower than those of men. In order to discuss and voice their interest, women started their own political clubs and newspapers. One of their main demands was that women must enjoy the same political rights as men. Some laws were introduced to improve the position of women. Their struggles still continue in several parts of the world. It was finally in 1946 that women in France won the right to vote just before the independence of India. Women were disappointed that the Constitution of 1791 reduced them to passive citizens. Passive citizens means they were not allowed to give their right to vote. They demanded the right to vote, second, to be elected to the assembly, and to hold political office. The revolutionary government did introduce laws that helped improve the lives of women. And what sort of steps taken by them? First, by creation of state schools, schooling was made compulsory for all girls. Their fathers could no longer force them into marriage against their will. Divorce was made legal and could be applied for by both women and men. Women could now train for jobs, could become artists or run small businesses. It was finally very important. It was finally in 1946 that women in France won the right to vote. Before this topic, we discussed about the Jacobin Club and their main leader Maximilien Robespierre. In which the period from 1793 to 94 known as the Reign of Terror. Why that period? The period from 1793 to 1794 is referred as the Reign of Terror because Maximilian Robespierre of the Jacobin Club followed a policy of severe control and punishment. All those who were considered as enemies of the Republic were arrested, tried by a revolutionary tribunal, and guillotined it if anyone found guilty. Peasants were forced to transport their granaries to the nearby cities and sell it at prices fixed by the government. The use of more expensive white flour was forbidden. All citizens had to eat bread made of whole wheat. These were the extreme steps taken by Maximilian Robespierre, and that's why the period from 1793 to 1794 known as the Reign of Terror. Now our next topic is the abolition of slavery. Jacobin regime most revolutionary social reform was the abolition of slavery in the French colonies. In the 17th century, slavery trade began. Slaves were brought from local chieftains, branded and shackled, and were packed tightly into ships for 3 months long voyage across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. Slave labor met the growing demand in European market for sugar, coffee, and indigo. Throughout the 18th century, there was little criticism of slavery in France. In 1794, the Convention legislated to free all slaves in the French overseas possessions. Napoleon introduced slavery after 10 years. In 1848, slavery was abolished in French colonies. Actually, the slavery means the bonded laborers. The European people itself did not want to work as a labor, and that's why there was a need for the slaves for the European countries. That's why the European countries started this slave trade. Next, the revolution and everyday life. France during 1789 saw changes in the lives of men, women, and children. Abolition of censorship happened in the summer of 1789. Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen proclaimed freedom of speech and expression to be a natural right. Freedom of press meant opposing views of events could be expressed. Plays, songs, and festive processions attracted large number of people. Conclusion of this chapter. Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself Emperor of France in 1804, and the main reason how he proclaimed himself as crowned himself as the Emperor of France, there was directly paved a way for Napoleon, because the directory often clash with the assembly, and that's why this paved the way for Napoleon. And he introduced many laws such as the protection of private property, and a uniform system of weight and measures provided by the decimal system. Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo in 1815. The idea of liberty and democratic rights were the most important legacy of the French Revolution. Colonized people revoked on the idea of freedom to create a sovereign nation state. A sovereign nation state means when we came together and worked for a collective approach. It means when everyone ignoring the individual approach and work together came together for a single cause. This created the feeling of collective belongingness among the people. And this collectiveness this created the feeling of nation state first in Europe, then later on this shifted from Europe to the Asian countries. Thank you for today. And if anyone have any doubt, then you can call me or you can send your message on my personal WhatsApp number. And I am also sending you the flowchart of this chapter. And if anyone have any query related with any topic, then you can call anytime. Thank you for today.